Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of our series. Today we'll be talking about what is bowel cancer and how does it form in the body.
Where the fun begins.
Bowel cancer, also known as colorectal cancer, can affect any part of the colon or the rectum. It may also be referred to as colon cancer or rectal cancer, depending on where it starts within the area. The colon and rectum form part of the large intestines. Before talking about cancer, let's quickly take a moment to actually understand the bowel and how it works.
You gotta know what a crumpet is to understand cricket.
The colon is the largest part of the large intestine, and depending on how tall you are, your large intestine will measure between 1.5 to 2 meters. So I've got here a few little triangles set up. From corner to corner, that's 2 meters. So if you're about my height, I'm 6'2". Shrunk slightly over the past 2 years, but yeah, that's roughly how long my large intestine was to start with. If you're a shorter person, vertically challenged, you're looking at more about 1.5 meters, so slightly shorter, because obviously there's not enough person to accommodate. So the colon receives your digested food, so from your stomach after you've eaten and everything else, and it starts to get processed where your body absorbs the nutrients and whatever else. And then the waste product will move through your body and along the colon out when you pass it. So the colon is divided into 4 different parts.
Only count to 4. I can only count to 4.
The ascending colon is the beginning of your colon, so when the small intestine ends, roughly at the ileum, then your large intestine starts. It is along the right hand side of your abdomen, and it continues up to the bend called a hepatic flexor. Yeah. The transverse colon follows across your abdomen, and it then moves down to the left corner called the hepatic flexure. It ends in a bend, becoming the splenic flexure just over here. So you got your hepatic and you've got your splenic flexure, the 2 corners. The descending colon, which moves down.
So then, mono means one, and rail means rail. And that concludes our intensive 3-week course.
Follows the transverse colon and splenic flexure. It is on the left-hand side of your abdomen. The sigmoid colon is the last part of the colon, and it connects to your rectum, roughly at the bottom left corner before it moves on its way out. The proximal colon is the ascending, so the up, and the transverse colon together, so your top right corner section. And the distal colon is the descending colon and the sigmoid colon together, so you're here and here. So basically you're forming 2 parts of a rectangle, pretty much. The rectum is the lower part of the large intestine, so the last 15 to 30 centimeters, that connects to your sigmoid colon. It receives waste, so whatever your body doesn't absorb after you've eaten it, from the colon, and it stores it until it passes out of your body through your anus when you go to the toilets. The anus is the opening at the lower end of the rectum through which waste is passed. And cancer, you can get cancer of the anus. It is a lot less common than bowel cancer, but it can happen, and it is treated differently than how bowel cancer would be treated, because it is an exit point of the body. Most bowel cancers start as a benign, non-lethal growth. They're called polyps, and that usually occurs in the wall or the lining of your bowel. So if you imagine you've got a tube, it's on the inside of that tube of where the lining would be. Now, as I mentioned, I have a family history of bowel cancer, but as I mentioned in the previous episode, we did the genetic testing. I don't carry the gene. My bowel cancer situation was a spontaneous mutation.
These mutations manifested
that could not have stopped or been avoided in any way or form. So polyps can typically grow in 2 different shapes. They can be flat, although it can be with a stalk, like a mushroom kind of formation. So mine was the flat form. So if you look at that compared to a standard can of drink, 375 ml, this is the size of what my tumour was. Let me see it, we can show it. There you go. So mine was 61 millimeters in diameter, and it is rather flat, so that's roughly the size of what it was when it was discovered. So 61 millimeters. So here in Australia, we use the metric system to measure.
Let's just say we'd like to avoid any imperial entanglements.
Other countries use different measurements. Don't judge them on that. So, mine was reasonably sized. The doctors, when they found it, and when I spoke to my specialist, surgeon and oncologist, based on its size and the cell type of what it was, they believe that it was inside me for about 5 to 7 years before it was found. So quite a long time. I'm very fortunate that I was able to get it out after a lot of chemo and radiation, which we'll talk about a bit later. Polyps are very common. Quite a lot of people get polyps. Up to about 40% of the human population will develop polyps in some time of their life, which is why colonoscopies and screening is so important, so they can be treated before they turn into something nasty, such as a tumour. Polyps are more common in men and older adults, so it's very important once you get to you're 45, 50 years old, you start to get regular checkups, but if you think you have a need to do so beforehand, definitely talk to your doctors. Polyps are usually harmless. However, some polyps can become cancerous, also known as malignant, and if left undetected, it can develop over time into a cancerous tumour, like what happened to me.
Little things, big things grow.
The tumour was found in my very first colonoscopy, I had no reason to do one sooner because, that genetic testing said I didn't need to, so, that's how it was. The most common type of bowel cancer is called an adenocarcinoma, so that's what I had with my tumour. And it is named after the gland cells within the lining of the bowel where the cancer first develops. So within that tunnel of the intestine, there are those cells, and that is what it's named after. There are other rarer types, which include the squamous cell cancers. That starts in the skin-like cells of the bowel lining. Carcinotomas, sarcomas, and lymphomas. I'll put up a few different images that I have gotten from the Bowel Cancer Australia website to demonstrate what those are. In advanced cases of bowel cancer, the cancerous tumour can spread, which is called metastasizing, beyond the bowel to other organs and sometimes the bones, depending on how far it spreads. So it is a pretty serious thing. Definitely, don't waste time finding help if you need it. As I said, some polyps grow flat, others do grow and project outwards. Some can be depressed within the lining, or they project inward into the lining of the bowel. So when my tumour was found, it had gotten to the stage where it was starting to press on the lining of the bowel. If you imagine these fingers here are the lining, these other ones were starting to press in and not protruding out of the lining, but they were pressing the lining outwards. So if it had stayed in for a bit longer, it could be a very different story right now. Typically, the larger the polyp, the greater the risk it may become cancerous. So when I had my first colonoscopy, I had 2 large polyps removed, and that's when the tumour, as I mentioned, was discovered. after doing chemo, after doing radiation, when it came time to remove the tumour, not only was there a tumour, but there was actually another polyp within that tumour as well. And that's not uncommon, so yeah, that was interesting to learn about. Adenomas typically have 3 growth patterns. They can be tubular, villous, and tubervillous. A tubular adenoma are the most common type of bowel polyps, and usually account for about 80% of that polyp type. Villous adenomas are generally larger polyps, and they grow into like a cauliflower shape formation type.
Did you just say cauliflower to me?
A tubulovillous adenoma contains a mixture of both the tubular and the villous growth, so it's a bit of a hybrid kind of polyp, so it's got several different characteristics. Yeah, there are several other kind of polyps. I won't go into that because it gets a bit lengthy, but I will put a few references and some links in the video description for you to read, as well as some more information on the first couple that I mentioned. Something of interest, inflammatory polyps occur most often in people with inflammatory bowel disease, such as Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Some people may refer to these as pseudopolyps, as they're not true polyps, but a reaction to inflammation in the colon. So inflammatory polyps are usually benign, and generally do not carry the risk of developing into bowel cancer, but they can mimic the similar problems that people with Crohn's or colitis might get. So, you know, if you do start to develop a problem and your doctor says, oh, it could be Crohn's, could be ulcerative colitis, make sure you get those scopes done anyway, because you can't just assume by looking at someone, or perhaps even a blood test. You know, sometimes you need to go to that specialist, get the camera in there, have a look at what's going on, so that they can eliminate the potential for cancer. So that's very important. Please don't forget to do that. Australia has one of the highest rates of bowel cancer in the world. I don't know why that is. It's simply a statistic that is out there. 1 in 15 Australians will develop bowel cancer in their lifetime. So if you think about it, when you were in school and you were in a classroom with 30 kids, 2 of you will get cancer. It's that simple. You know, 30 people in a room, 1 in 15, 2 people in that room will get cancer. Bowel cancer is Australia's 2nd deadliest cancer overall. But more specifically, bowel cancer is the deadliest type of cancer for young Australians aged 25 to 44. Yes, that's why there's such a big push for, you know, early screening and testing, because, you know, if you're in that age bracket of 25 to 44, and, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you're too young to get bowel cancer. Yeah, that happened to me with a lot of people that we knew. My doctors were fantastic. My doctors did all the right things straight away, you know, which is why we were able to get this out, and, you know, a few other things happened along the way. But, you know, I'd talk to family, I'd talk to friends, they're all like, oh, you're only young, you're too young to get bowel cancer. That's not true. You cannot be too young to get something. It is always possible for it to happen. You know, when I'd go to the hospital to do my radiation, you know, it's mostly older people there, and they would say to me, you don't look sick, you're too young, you should not be getting bowel cancer. I said, well, it happened, that's why I'm here. When I went to the chemotherapy clinic for those 3 months, you know, people would say, you know, they'd be sitting in all the other chairs, we're all hooked up to the tubes and everything else, and they're like, you're too young, you know, you're the youngest person here by 15, 20 years.
You are neither dead nor dying. What is your purpose here?
You know, and it was true. I'd look around the room, it was 99% older people. You know, bowel cancer was usually considered an old person's disease or an old man's disease. You know, it can affect anybody. You know, bowel cancer does not discriminate. It affects them.
Just the men. But the women. And the children, too.
Doesn't matter, you know, what your background is, you are at risk. The chances of developing bowel cancer rises significantly from the age 50 onwards. However, the number of Australians under the age of 50 diagnosed with bowel cancer has continued to increase steadily over the past few years. It is important to know and understand the symptoms of bowel cancer, and it is imperative to have them investigated if they persist for more than 2 weeks. So if you're having bowel problems for 2 weeks or more, you have to go to your doctor. When you start to develop problems, get your phone out, write a few notes in your phone, send yourself an email, keep track of what's going wrong, write down the dates so that you're aware of the time frames of what's happening. If you're eating the same kind of foods each day, the same time each day, and something changes, well then it has to be something within your body, because if you're eating the same food at the same time, things should continue the same way. So if your bowel habit changes, and all sorts of different things, so symptoms, which we're going to go through in the next episode, please talk to your doctor. I cannot stress how important it is. I'm not a doctor, I'm just simply talking about personal experience, and I'm working off information that I have sourced from the Bowel Cancer Australia website, Cancer Australia website, and the Cancer Council Australia website. So these are stats and information coming from very reliable sources that I'm then just presenting in this video format. Thank you for watching. Please share this with your family, your friends, your carers, anyone who you think might need to watch something like this. There's a little like button if you don't mind liking it. There's a subscribe button. Click on that as well. It's free to subscribe. There's a bell somewhere here. Give me some comments. Give me some feedback. Tell me if you like this, if you want to see something specific. Because I am looking at doing quite a few more videos to talk about this. Because it is a very important thing for us to all be aware about. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Have a good day.